video of On the Bench, not the sideline talk anymore, as we are going to continue our series of each week of the UFL. This is week 2. We got anything brief to say before we get started?
Yeah, I'm actually my guesses, educated guesses and bets have been shaken because some teams did not perform like I thought they would. Of course, football is football. Never everything and anything never goes as planned. And I am quite excited that the Renegades were able to hold on against the Roughnecks. And I do have to say that many of these standings have surprised me, and I look forward to breaking it down.
Yeah, starting first with the first game is the Michigan Panthers versus the Birmingham Stallions, as both teams had, I want to say, not great, the word's great, kind of like quarterback struggle. The final was 21-12 in Birmingham's favor, as this puts you 0-1 for your predicting of the games. So
Yes.
without further ado, it's going to get in the passing game. So looks like each team got one injured quarterback, and which being for Birmingham, Alex McGough, and for the Panthers, Danny Etling. But we're not going to worry about them, as they didn't affect a whole lot of the game. Anyway, going to the primary, Matt Corral, former Carolina Panthers quarterback. He went through 18 for 29, 98 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, with a 62.1 pass completion rating. Not a terrible game. I mean, not a great game. I mean, the interceptions, if you didn't have the interceptions, you could say it was a great game by UFL standards.
Yeah.
But I think this would be a okay game just because of those 2 interceptions.
Yes. And though I did not watch the game, it looks like those 2 interceptions were most likely hasty or miscommunicated throws. Miscommunication, it happens anywhere, but a hasty throw, especially under pressure from the defense, can shackle any young quarterback, rookie quarterback, anything like that. So I'm guessing those 2 interceptions were hasty throws.
Yeah, and I agree as well. And going to the Michigan Panthers passing game, as Bryce Perkins went through 12 for 23, 132 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception, and a 52.2 completion rating. He had, I want to say, a worse game because he threw for like 66 yards less than him, and he had a pick, a touchdown. I mean, and then he barely threw 50. He's barely able to complete 50% of his passes, which, like we said, we didn't watch the game, but if I had to take a guess, it was probably due to just underthrowing it, overthrows, or bad communication.
Yeah, not really. Maybe, yeah, not really contributing to the game. And I would also quickly like to add that because this is the UFL and the quarterbacks aren't, I wouldn't say they aren't as good as the NFL, so there's more chance of second and third string quarterbacks getting playing time, which is probably why we're seeing so many quarterback names being thrown around.
Yeah, and what doesn't help too is I think both of them actually got hurt. Both starting quarterbacks got injured during the game.
Yeah,
But
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, because both clearly have very little stats that provide that they got benched. So anyway, going to the rushing game, as both teams really didn't do much. I'll give the overall stats and just talk about the number one guy because there's nothing really much to talk about. So the total, 26 attempts, 73 yards, 1 touchdown, long as 27 for averaging 2.8 yards a carry. That's Birmingham, as the Panthers had 26 attempts, 120 yards, 0 touchdowns, longs was 15 for 4.6 yards. The top rusher for each was Ricky Person Jr. for the Stallions at 17 attempts, 53 yards, 1 touchdown, longs was 27. It was averaging 3.1, while Nate McCary of the Panthers was averaging had 14 attempts for 53, no touchdown. Longest was 13 with a 3.8 yards a carry. Just looking at the stats, the Panthers had a much better rushing game than Birmingham.
Yes. I mean,
But
oh, look, the quarterback Bryce Perkins he averaged the most at 10 yards a carry. So maybe he wasn't as much of a passing, maybe he contributed in the running game as well.
yeah, but it did. The thing for a lot of football is unless you have like elite running backs, a rushing game ain't going to do a whole lot because if you can't get a
Yeah,
passing game going, then it's just the rushing game is going to be not even good either because it's complimentary because you want the team to think that you're going to pass and then you rush the football or vice versa. But
true,
clearly
yes.
that didn't work out for him. And then going to not defense, receiving as I do totals and then top receiver, like the Birmingham Stallions had 18 catches for 198 yards, 1 touchdown, 52 is the longest for 30 targets and 82 yards after carry, while the Panthers had 15 catches, 140 yards, 1 touchdown, 24 was the longest, 26 targets, and 51 yards after carry. Birmingham's top receiver being Deion Kane, which four catches for 84 yards, 1 touchdown, 52 is his longest, 4 targets, and 27 yards after carry. So he caught all 4 passes that were thrown to him, and he made those passes worthwhile.
I mean, he only caught 4 passes, but those were huge and contributed a whole lot. So less is usually more. So
Yeah.
at times,
Yeah, because to take an example from like the NFL is if you looked at the Giants where they had 2 decent wide receivers, like one wide receiver, can't remember his name, but you get like 17 catches, but for like 50 yards, while the other receiver would get like 3 catches for like 100, like 4 catches for like 150 yards and like 2 touchdowns. So a little goes a long way for
true, yeah.
receiving, and that's true, and I think in any level of football. And then going to the Michigan Panthers as Soazi,
Suasi Mariner.
yeah, he had three catches, 44 yards, 2 touchdowns, long as 24, 4 targets, and 6 yards after carry. Their passing game was very ineffective. It did nothing
Yeah, I
as
mean, looking at yards after carry, there isn't really a whole lot of difference. I mean, 2 of them had 12 and 13, but that's really not much compared to the Stallions who had 27, 18, and 22 at their top.
yeah. So
So
passing wasn't great.
everything was kind of depleted in both the running and the passing for the receiving for the Panthers.
Yeah, especially compared to the last game where they dominated their last game. They had a
Yes,
very
that's
good
really true.
against the Showboats. They dominated them. But anyway, going to the defense, like we did in the last video, we're only going to do totals, not going to break down every single player, because if not, it would be like forever. So
Yeah.
anyway, going to the stats, they had 58 tackles, 48 solo tackles, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for losses, 1 interception, 5 burps, 1 fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. So overall, pretty good game defensively.
Especially because they won, so they
Yeah, I mean you can
the
see.
stats ring through. Every
Yeah,
one of those categories is filled. Yeah,
what's crazy looking is that the each team had the same amount of tackles and solo tackles.
that's crazy. Whoa, no way.
Yeah, as the Panthers had 53 tackles, 48 solo tackles, 0 sacks, 6 tackles for losses, 2 interceptions, 6 burps, 0 fumbles, and then 0 fumble recoveries. So we clearly see one defense that was a lot better, and that being the the Stallions. They clearly had the better defense, which then led to the final score, like I said before, 21-12.
Yep. I mean, if you can turn the interceptions into potential touchdowns, you're giving your offense a chance to score with the ball.
Yeah, so that's going to be it for that game. The next game we're going to, which was the game which I took and said was going to win. I said that the defenders are going to win, and they won. They won 17-12 against the DC Defenders.
DC Defenders are now 2-0.
Sorry, the DC Defenders beat the Memphis Showboat 17-12, making my start for the predictions 1-0. As a final of 17-12 in DC's favor, and sad part is the Memphis Showboats are now 0-2.
And we will break down their offense, defense, and everything to see why they suffered.
Yes. So going to the Memphis Showboats passing game, which I think might be one of the better passing games, as E.J. Perry went through 18 for 28 at 205 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and completed 64.3 of his passes.
And his rating is 71.3 overall.
Yeah, so it was a pretty good game for him at least.
Okay, now, 205 yards, that's really what stands out to me. I think he's a good quarterback. Maybe he doesn't have as good of a team around him, you know?
Yeah.
He's an island sitting in the middle of a Dead Sea, you know?
Yeah. Anyway, going to the DC passing game, which honestly looks to be a really good passing game for at least having no negative sides. But he went through 12 for 26, 152 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions, 46.2 pass, 46.2 completion, and 77.7 rating. Not the greatest passing. He only made 12 completions, but it did work out for them in the end. So
yeah, I mean it's ironic that the Showboats quarterback Perry had the most passing yards, but it wasn't enough to win.
Yeah, and we're going to see, well, somewhat see why. Well, I can't even really see why, because they had actually pretty equal rushing games, as Memphis Showboats went through for 26 attempts, 103 yards, 1 touchdown, 18 yards was the longest, averaging 4.0 yards to carry, while the defenders went through 32 attempts for 113 for 0 touchdowns. 9 was their longest attempt among 2 players, and they're averaging 3.5 yards to carry.
So for the most part, they're fairly balanced.
Rushing wise, each team really didn't have much of each rushing game didn't have much of an impact.
Wow, look at this. So in the receiving, 5 receivers for the Showboats, just 5 receivers versus 8 receivers for the defenders.
Yes, but I will say this: they're among those 5 receivers, they have very good wide receivers. So
that's very true. Yeah,
and Jonathan Adams, as he went 128. He went for 9 catches for 120 yards, 0 touchdowns, longest 39 yards, to 10 targets to 42 yards after carry.
That's pretty good.
Catch. That's really good, honestly. That is really, really good.
I think the only stain on this wide receiver core is the fact that they could not produce touchdowns. I mean, they had straight big round 0 for touchdowns.
Yeah, so the thing that that probably made them losing their games if they played like this is probably their defense. I think their defense is what's keeping them or holding them back from having great games, because I mean, if you look at DC's receiving game, it's nowhere near as close, as their top receiver Chris Rolland went through 3 catches for 66 yards, 0 touchdowns, 45 yards was his longest catch, 4 targets, and 20 yards after catch. So, I mean, not as good or dominant as a wide receiver core. It clearly helped them win, but it wasn't nowhere near compared. Not a single receiver compared to Jonathan Adams of the Memphis Showboats.
True.
And going to the defensive side of the ball,
And we
for
will
this
see
game.
everything told.
Yes. And looking at this, yes, it looks like their defense kind of failed them as they had 58 tackles, 38 solos, one looks like to be one sack. Yeah, one sack, 3 tackles for losses, 0 interceptions, 4 burps, 0 fumble recoveries, and 0 forced fumbles. The Then we go to the DC side of the ball where they had 57 tackles, 34 solos, 0 sacks, just like actually no, 0 sacks, 5 tackles for losses, 1 interception, 3 burps, 0 forced fumbles, but 1 fumble recovery. So they had 2 turnovers compared to the other team at 0. So that's probably where they had their scoring drives, where they got points up on those turnovers. But by the looks of it, both defenses didn't have, I don't say a huge impact because but both defenses played a pretty similar game. They not
Very true.
each
Yeah.
one doesn't really stand out to one another. It was more controlled by the offense, and where the defense had those 2 turnovers. Anyway, going to the Arlington Renegades versus Houston Roughnecks.
Yes.
Yes, as you said, the Renegades did. Indeed, they won, so that puts you as 500 as of right now for this series for predicting the games, as the Renegades won 11-9 versus Houston.
And man, they almost lost me another bet. It was close, extremely close.
Now, I mean, it was not not one of the prettiest games in the world. Anyway, going to the passing side, as I don't think the Roughnecks used 2 quarterbacks. I personally think actually yes, so they might have actually used 2 quarterbacks.
I think
in this
Nolan
game.
Henderson was benched. I mean, look at that, 0 for 3.
Benched or he was hurt. I can
Maybe.
most likely hurt just because I don't know why he'd bench somebody who's only gone 0 for 3. That's only 3 passes.
Yeah.
Anyway, their starting quarterback, Anthony Brown, went 14 for 30, 179 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 incomplete, and went for 46.7 completion rating and a 63.1 rating. Not a good game. Not a good game at all.
Yeah, that's not really that good at all.
No, they couldn't get their passing game going, which is another reason why they lost last game. But speaking of a team that could get their passing game going, was Luis Perez of the Renegades, as he went 19 for 27, 211 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 70.4 completion percentage, and 100.5 QB passer rating or QB or rating. This is the best game we've seen all season so far from any quarterback.
That's 200. Yeah, that's 211 yards in that game. That's crazy.
That is 100% the best game we've seen out of any quarterback so far. Anyway, going to rushing, it looks like a disaster for honestly both teams.
Oh gosh, yeah.
One more
Wow.
than the other, as the Roughnecks only had their leading rusher, Anthony Brown, went for 3 attempts for 20 yards, longest for 13, averaging 6.7 yards a carry. Renegades had a much better rushing game, but theirs wasn't as bad as Dia Hunter went for 14 attempts, 63 yards, 0 touchdowns, longest for 27, averaging 4.5 yards carry. And Kalen Balaj didn't even have that great of a game either compared to his last one. We had like 104
Luis
yards.
Perez didn't do much either on the rushing.
Well, he's not much of a rushing quarterback, so we
Yeah.
can't hold it too much against them.
Oh,
But
but look at this. The receiving. I think this is where the game was largely played in the receiving. Look at this.
yeah, the passing game looks to be much more better for the Renegades. But first, as the Roughnecks did absolutely nothing for passing. I mean, one target for the leading receivers, one target, Anthony Brown, one target, 37 yards, long as 37, had 38 yards after catch. And it just gets worse, as you can imagine, from there. While the Renegades top receiver, Isaiah Winstead, seven catches, for 73 yards or touchdowns, long as 21, 9 targets, and 150, sorry, not 100, 15 yards after catch. So, a pretty dominant passing game. I mean, at least a good game for Isaiah Winstead. I mean, everybody else didn't have much of a big game, but they probably all serve their purpose. And Isaiah Winstead had the best game out of all 8 receivers.
Yeah, I mean this is all where the 211 yards went into play for Luis Perez.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a great quarterback. I mean, what's crazy too is he had 211 on only passing to having a completion to 7 receivers, while Anthony Brown had 179 yards to 9 receivers that actually not 9 receivers that actually caught or had a completion. So it's seeing very 2 different teams. And this game was clearly a defensive game.
Yeah, so we're looking at the defense.
Yeah, let's go on the defense, and we see despite the Renegades winning, the Renegades had a worse defense, honestly. As we go to here, as the Roughnecks had 60 tackles, 43 solo tackles, 3 sacks, 9 tackles for losses, 0 interceptions, 2 burps, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. Very, very good defensive game looking at by there. And going to the Renegades game, they had a much less effective but less dominant. Well, when it comes to like the tackles, sacks, and all that, as they only had
Overall defensive play, I guess.
Yeah, as they only had 44 tackles, 29 solos, 2 sacks, 6 tackles for losses, 1 interception, which the other with Roughnecks not get, 9 burps, but 0 forced fumbles or fumble recoveries. So I think we see 2 polar opposite defenses, and yet the one that played worse, at least looking at the overall statistics, had a worse game overall. Well,
This was just a rough game for both teams.
yeah, because seeing the Renegades how they played last week, I mean, they destroyed San Antonio, and then they go play this game, and it's like, where'd they go?
Yeah, nobody can really understand what happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, and going to our last game,
That just ended.
which ended not too long ago, maybe about 40 minutes ago, or 40-ish minutes ago. I said St. Louis was going to win, and they won, as they won 26-9 versus San Antonio Brahmas. Very dominant. This is the most dominated game we have all day.
Yes, it's clearly one-sided.
Yes, clearly one side, just like the St. Louis first game. I mean, as it was just absolutely brutal. Going into the passing game, nothing much to talk about. I mean, I think this is the worst passing game so far from a quarterback. It's Kellen Mond, 13 for 27, 129 yards, and no touchdown, one interception, and 48.1 yard completion.
Honestly, I don't see why they don't start another quarterback over him.
Yeah, I believe he started both games, and both he did not do well in. So I think they should reconsider starting someone else. while Manny Wilkins had a very, I want to say, pretty good game. I mean, he only threw 16 times. He went 12 for 16, 162 yards. He made 75% of his passes and 106.8 yards. So only going by what he threw, he had a great game.
Yeah. And the reason why there's no touchdowns, and we'll get to that in a second, is the running game.
Yes. The running game absolutely dominated the whole game. Actually, I think for both teams, the running game had a huge effect offensively. For San Antonio, the best guy, Anthony McFarland, 56 attempts, 55 yards, longest 22, Brown 9.2 yards carry, not bad. They had one rushing touchdown, not bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, going to St. Louis.
I mean, wow, 164 yards total with 3 touchdowns produced by one running back, by the way, Jacob Sailors, who's averaging 4.2, not the highest average on the Battlehawks, but it was enough to where he was getting the touchdowns.
And he's a huge reason why they won. As him and the quarterback both had a great rushing game. Anyway, going to the passing game where both teams, it really didn't exist. Well, it existed, but not as much. It set them up for more of the run game. As number one receiver, Jacob Harris for the Brahmas had 3 catches for 69 yards, 0 touchdowns. Longest was 30. Had 8 targets and 18 yards after carry. So clearly Jacob Harris was either dropping it or the quarterback could not get on the ball. I didn't watch this game. I watched the Renegades game. Clearly something wasn't going on between the wide receiver and the quarterback.
Do you think it was miscommunication?
For some of them, yeah, but
I'm going to say Kellen Mond is not a good quarterback, and I think miscommunication and hastiness are definitely his biggest hinders to his playing.
Yeah, I mean, oof. I mean, that was a rough game for everybody overall, except for the Battlehawks. For their leading receiver, 1 catch and 1 target for 58 yards, long as 58, no touchdowns, and he had 100, not 100, I don't know what he's now, 15 yards after the catch, and then everybody else had a pretty good game. I mean, as you said, there's only 12 completions out of 16 passes, so yeah, we're not going to see some crazy, like Anthony or the dude from Memphis type deal stats, but overall, for only throwing 12 or completing 12 passes out of 16, pretty good receiving game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing much to complain about.
Yeah. Pretty satisfactory.
Yeah, especially for the way this game turned out. I mean, if they lost and it was like that, then we'd be raising questions. But clearly, they didn't lose; they won. So nothing much to complain about there. Now, going to defense, I expect St. Louis's defense to be absolutely insane, which isn't too bad.
Yeah.
So starting with Brahmas, 60 tackles, 39 solos, one sack, 8 tackles for losses, 0 interceptions, 2 burps, 0 forced fumbles, and 0 fumble recoveries. A lot of defense that they played, and they did not produce a whole lot on defense. You can really see a struggling defense here.
As I've said before, looking at the Brahmas and how many tackles they had, I think they were playing defense a lot of the time, and they were pushed back on their heels, so to speak. They're too busy playing defense to really play.
Yeah, which really sucks for the defense. Anyway,
it tires their defense out.
Yeah, it really does. It's probably one of the reasons why the game was so hot. Anyway, going to the St. Louis Battlehawks, as they only had 44 tackles, they're 28 solos, 4 sacks.
Wow.
4 tackles for losses, 1 interception, 6 burps, 0 forced fumbles, and 0 fumble recoveries. we clearly see a dominant defense as they clearly gave the offense the ball plenty of times. I mean, this game was definitely, like we said before, one-sided.
Oh yes, they're very
As
one-sided.
yeah, as St. Louis won easily. I mean, I think they're gonna. If St. Louis keeps playing like this, they're gonna be a powerhouse for the whole season. I mean,
Yeah. Well, they're going to be a tough team for the Renegades to beat if they're going to win the XFL conference in the future at the end of the season.
yeah, I think once when those two teams play, it's gonna be a good game. It's gonna be a fun game to watch.
Oh yeah, I mean we're going to see them play each other sometime this season.
Yep, twice. One in St. Louis and one here.
Oh boy, I maybe we should try to go to the home game against the Battlehawks.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, that is all 4 games I've played this weekend from Friday to Saturday, Sunday. We're gonna do the same thing we did last video. We're gonna predict the 2 game. Each gonna predict 2 games. So you will go first like you did last time. So the first game is Arlington versus Birmingham Stallions.
Let's see. Let's see. The which game?
Arlington versus Birmingham.
Let's see. This is a tough one. The Stallions, the defending champions. I think the Renegades will win. If they
All right.
can rely, if what's his name, Luis Perez can just his keep his passing game up, I think we can do it. Keep our running game going. We need to force them to play defense and tire their defense out. But I think in part Luis Perez can do it. So I do want to say that the Renegades will win.
All right, your next game is San Antonio Brahmas versus the Michigan Panthers.
All right. What do I think? I think the Panthers are gonna blow out the Brahmas. I'm just gonna say that right now. The Brahmas defense is not that good. And I think that there is a very low chance of them winning, especially if they keep Kellen Mond's their quarterback, right?
Yep.
If they keep him in, I think the Brahmas are screwed. And my advice would be bench him and put another guy in. If they don't, I think 99-1 that the Panthers are most likely going to win.
All right, now it's my 2 games. Oh boy, as my first one is Houston Roughnecks versus the Memphis Showboats. Two teams which are 0-2. But if I had to pick a team that's going to win, I'm going to say Memphis for one simple reason, as their quarterback, I think his name's Jonathan Adams, had a great game. Has had 2 great back-to-back games. I think he's going to be the saving grace for Memphis. I think he's going to lead them to a victory.
I think you're right. He's a really good quarterback.
No, he's a wide receiver.
Oh, my bad, wide receiver. But yeah,
I think he's going to be their saving grace offensively. Now, going to our fourth game, the last game. DC Defenders versus St. Louis Battlehawks.
whew, that's going to be a big one, man. I think that's like the UFL game of the week.
Yes, that or the Arlington Renegades versus Birmingham.
Yes.
But I'm going to give the ball to St. Louis. They have everything going with them. They have all the momentum. Absolutely, almost picture perfect football. I think they're not going to win as dominant as we've seen before, but I think they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be a close game, a lot closer than has St. Louis been winning, but I think they're going to win by maybe a field goal against DC.
Yes. Well, we'll see how these predictions turn out.
Yeah, we'll see.
This
has been our first video as we named the channel On the Bench, and I hope you have enjoyed this. As we want to keep this series going for every week, we'll get back to on the series next week when the week 3 finishes.
All right.
Thank you for watching.